T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen, a sad edition as the season comes to an end before I think a lot of us thought that it might. But here we are. The Texans lost to the Patriots on Sunday, so we are in off-season mode. This will be the final live before we take a little break till after the Super Bowl, probably late February, March timeframe. Ramp back up for off-season stuff, but just here to talk it out. And there's already plenty of off-season discussions to be had right now as it stands. We've been waiting till Thursday. It turns out it was a huge blessing. There's a lot of stuff that has happened in the aftermath of this loss. But just to start out, Tom, I just want to know, what was your immediate reaction to the game itself? Like, what was your immediate takeaway watching it unfold live?
I mean, I was like everybody else, right? Like CJ Stroud was not at his best. They needed him to be good, not great. He wasn't even that. And I said as much. I was on the Houston Sports podcast, and I was like, look, this is a lot about 7. I mean, we can talk about all the other things, and you know, since then, you know, teammates have come out and done a really good job of supporting. Coaches come out, a really good job of supporting CJ. But you know, if I'm being honest, I really lay this loss at the feet of CJ Stroud. I mean, I thought the defense played well enough. I thought the defense played really good. I thought, you know, when the ball was placed where it needed to be placed, I thought guys made plays for CJ. I thought this team didn't run the football well. I will say that. Not a lot of people want to talk about the running game. The running game was absolutely non-existent, and I think that's you know, should be on Nick Haley a little bit maybe to try to find, you know, a running game to help alleviate some of the pressure that CJ was feeling. Just like the Texans defense, when you get one-dimensional, you know, guys go eat, and the Patriots did that. And CJ didn't help him, but or he didn't help himself, but it just was ugly. And as much as I hated it, I kind of understood it. This is a lot to ask from CJ Stroud. We expect a lot. It's year 3. There's a lot of guys that talked about it. Like, look, this isn't year 6, 7, 8. You know, for me, I took that and was like, okay, next year better be the year, CJ. This defense is going to come back. You will not have another. There's no more grace. He just burnt all the grace. Like the expectations will be super high. It'll be make or break time, and I'm okay with that.
We've spoken to it throughout CJ's time, pretty much since his second season. I mean, you know, first season, rainbows and butterflies, not too much to say negative. Oh, look, we got an Aaron Wilson scoop from Brandon Hallam. Popovich is going to be at the Senior Bowl. Thank God. Maybe he'll find some talent there for the offensive line. But we've talked about it. You know, you can break down what's wrong with the Texans offense into basically 3 categories, which is CJ Stroud, the O-line, and scheme. And I think that we saw even in this season the full spectrum of it. Starting the season, working with Nick Caley, it was a rough start because the scheme is still kind of the offense is adjusting, gelling with the new scheme, and then obviously the O line issues were persistent throughout that, which wasn't helping anything. And it felt like somewhere in the middle of the season, probably after the Broncos game or leading into it, the Texans started to gel offensively and we hit that streak. And it's not like the Texans offense was like blowing teams out of the water. They were just playing at the level we needed them to. And if you look back at the regular season stats, right, the offense was exactly what we said it needed to be in order for this team to go all the way, which was very average. It was pretty much run of the middle, in just about any category that you could think of in terms of production. And so to go into the playoffs and do what CJ Stroud did, it was very much on him. And I think a lot of people are, maybe short-sightedly, I don't know if they're just like, a lot of people are pinning it on the Patriots game. The whole playoffs, like it was CJ Stroud, and they were just playing an awful team in Pittsburgh. And to put it into perspective, like the Texans on turnovers only gave up 7 points. And they only gave up 7 points because CJ Stroud threw a pick six. So I can go back through and do the ifs, but I mean, I don't want to act like Justin Herbert is our quarterback or something and start going through the ifs and the ifs and the ifs. As much as CJ Stroud, I mean, at this point probably deserves it, and I think he'd tell you that. I mean, he's been very candid about his role in this. He's not denying anything. Some people I think are maybe reading a little too deep into it and trying to find where he's avoiding blame, but I don't get that from how CJ has spoken after this. And I think you touched on it, which is that obviously we've talked about it before, and this is a factor, right? That the offensive line in the run game never established. They never got off the ground, and that forced the offense into being one-dimensional. You could even put part of that on Nick Caley. It almost felt like early on abandoning the run game. I don't think Woody Marks had like 5 rushes that were for positive yardage. It was an insanely, like the Patriots shut down the run game, and the Texans offensive line just didn't really perform well in any way. But what I'll say is this, like we can go through all the issues that happened, but the reason I'm comfortable saying that this is a CJ Stroud game, specifically against the Patriots, is that those turnovers were egregious. And I think at one point, someone in the middle of the game, I think it was Bill Barnwell, was like, the Texans offense could literally snap the ball on first down and punt it and be more effective than they're being right now with CJ Stroud playing quarterback for this team. And I mean, it is true. And those turnovers, there was maybe one where it was like, okay, all of them, I think you can look at and think, the ball was a little behind or the ball wasn't placed well, or dude, take the sack. Just hang on to you don't have to get the ball out every single time. Like if you take a sack for, a loss of 15, guess what? In some of those situations, we were still within field goal range with that sack, but generally speaking, not turning the ball over is always better. And so that was, it was a very rough performance from CJ. And I think we both can agree going into this, that was the target of this. And so with that, we can branch into the next part of the conversation, which I think when you look into the offseason is how do you view CJ Stroud's situation? I told Tom before the show, I said, Tom's really good at playing it close to the vest. Regrettably so in some ways. Like I think there's some things where I was like, maybe I should have held that one in. I stand by what I've said and what I've tweeted since the game happened, but like, I'm like in the moment, let's say there's people that are in my replies that are like, dude, we're 5 days removed from the game. The Super Bowl hasn't happened. Like, we don't have to hash out everything about the Texans right now, but like, I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking about it now. I got to put it out there. But I just want to know, Tom, how do you feel about CJ Stroud's situation going into this offseason? It's an offseason where the Texans have to decide if they're going to pick up his 5th-year option. A lot of quarterbacks in CJ Stroud's shoes get major extensions in this offseason. There's a lot at stake, and the playoff performance, I think, throws a lot of it for a loop. But how do you feel about it?
Well, I don't think there's a question of if they have to pick up his 5th-year option. They're definitely going to do that. The question is are they going to sign him to an extension before that to lump in that extension with the 5th year? Or is the 5th year going to be a prove it type deal where you basically are playing on the 1 year, and then if they want to sign you, they can sign you. They want to franchise you, they can franchise you, but you're kind of like year to year to year. I don't know how there's a world where David Mulligetta and CJ Stroud come to the Texans and ask them for an extension. I mean, I guess they could, and they could throw some numbers around, but I feel like anything they would ask for would not be enough for them, or it would be just too much for the Texans. Like they would come up with a number, say 55 million a year AAV. There's no way that they could justify it other than saying, hey, this is the number one draft pick. He's got, 3 playoff wins. He's been to the playoffs every year. Like
just ignore the turnovers.
Yeah. The performance the last year and a half has been meh, but this is a guy that can only go up. I mean, I guess you could sell it that way. I just don't see Nick Caserio doing that. I think he's the king of the short contract. So why on earth would he change his ways now and just say, nope, we're hitching our wagon to this dude. We're signing him long-term now, and we're giving him everything he wants. It would look very much like Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, and look how that turned out. They basically sight unseen.
Deshaun Watson, like his body of I hate saying this, right? I have to lead with this, but Deshaun Watson's body of work, I've looked through the first 3 years of Deshaun Watson's career, his body of work statistically was significantly more impressive than what CJ Stroud has put out. I think CJ Stroud's rookie season is one of, if not the most impressive rookie seasons a quarterback has ever had. But when you average that over 3 years, you don't get like, oh, this is very clearly a player that's on the same level as what Deshaun Watson was for this Texans team before he was traded. And that's Deshaun Watson had leverage over the Texans in a lot of ways, which is what made him being I'll just put it this way. This is not a very well-formulated thought, and you may offend some people, but if CJ Stroud was suddenly in the same situation as Deshaun Watson at the end of his time with the Texans, Nick Caserio would not be able to flip CJ Stroud for multiple first-round picks. That CJ Stroud is a player that at this point in his career would get maybe one first-round pick. I don't think he'd be outright released, but that he don't get a significant return from a CJ Stroud that's going through the same legal troubles that Deshaun Watson had at the end of his career. So I mean, I love CJ, and I want to be clear. Like I think that the best path forward is to stick with CJ. It's going to sound, I think throughout our discussions, add CJ Stroud to the list, right? Let's go down the list of people that I owe apologies to. I think in the future, CJ is going to be one of them, and it's going to sound really bad when I talk about him pretty much throughout this offseason, but I think he would tell you that it's not undeserved based off of how it went in the playoffs. And that's to say, right, a lot of people are looking at his performance this season. Like I said, the Texans offense as a whole was average this season during the regular season, and CJ Stroud was average. It was what we needed from him. The only issue is the way that he performed in the postseason. He produced a lot of turnovers and did exactly what you can't do as a quarterback that's being asked to manage the game for an elite defense. And so with that, this is very similar to our discussion about like I told you in the middle of the season before the offensive line kind of picked it up a little bit, where I was like, with Nick Caserio, he does everything else well, but if the only fix is the offensive line, you have to ask yourself, do you want to keep Caserio around to fix the offensive line, or do you want to move on and find someone who can do that? And so that's the question with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is definitely playing at what is an acceptable rate for a franchise quarterback. I look at Jared Goff. I look at other quarterbacks that just produce, but like in big moments maybe fall apart. That's the problem with the quarterback position in this league, is that once you have one, to move on from him is you have to have some certainty that you can fix it. And aside from a Hail Mary trade for Joe Burrow, which is going around, and I will talk about that later. That's a whole nother thing where people are talking trading CJ Stroud for Joe Burrow, which is ridiculous for a lot of reasons. None of which is obviously Joe Burrow on the Texans would be great, but there's more to it than just that. Anyways, the situation is similar between our discussions earlier in the season with Nick Caserio, in that if CJ Stroud shuts down and becomes a turnover machine when it gets cold in the postseason, then you have to ask yourself, can you win a Super Bowl with a quarterback that starts turning the ball over when the postseason hits? And I mean, I think it's a more tenable situation. I think that in this offseason, if the Texans, work on the offensive line and work on getting a running back and fixing the run game to become more stout, that in those situations, instead of going, oh shoot, Woody Marks isn't getting any yards, I guess we're going to throw it 45 times with CJ Stroud. You go, okay, CJ, it's cold. There's snow on the ground. The other team could be good, bad, or indifferent at defending the run, but we are literally just going to line it up and run the ball, which is what Nick Caley has said he wants to do. He wants to be a run first, smash mouth offense. You have to build that. And then when CJ's good, you can ride the hot hand and you can let him throw it. And when CJ is in cold weather and you don't know if he's going to take the sack or throw a very erroneous interception, you turn around and you go, okay, well, now we know that if we're in this situation, it's run the ball. And maybe like occasionally take a little, chunk play if you can, like a little check down on a short just to throw the other team off so that they don't know that we're just going to run the ball. But the Texans don't have that. And so this offseason, I'd say that to me is a high priority is fixing the run game and establishing, whether you get some certainty that Joe Mixon's coming back. Either way, I think you're adding a running back, whether it's in the draft or signing Breece Hall, but you do everything you can to address the run game in the offensive line and establish a team that can play that smash mouth level of football. So for me, the way I view CJ Stroud this offseason, I'm kind of on a tangent here, but I'll answer my own question before I turn it back over. Do you have anything to say to what I just said? I don't want to like make you forget it with this.
No. I mean, there's a lot there to chew on, but the highlight I would say is that, man, you can't take a 24-year-old quarterback and decide he's not good all of a sudden. Like,
and that's not what I'm trying to do.
You hold on. You can't say that they got 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, and now all of a sudden you can't get that for CJ Stroud. There's no way. You can't say that. I mean, I guess you can if you want to, but I won't live there. That's one of those you're going to be like,
let me
this
touch
is
on
a
that
bad
discussion,
tweet.
okay? So a lot of fans are like, I'm done with Stroud, and then the immediate response from reasonable people, which I'll tentatively call myself, I don't know if I'm a good assessor of if I'm reasonable or not, but I like to think I'm a pretty reasonable person. I look at that and I go, okay, well, what do the Texans have to give for Joe Burrow? And if you give all of that up, which go back to the amount of first-round picks it takes to get a young and good quarterback, 3 first-round picks, you have 3 years where you're not picking in the first round. You still have an offensive line that needs help. Sure, you give Joe Burrow a defense, so I guess it would be a better situation for him, but it begs a lot of questions. You can logic your way around some of that, like, oh, well, the value is better on offensive linemen later in the draft anyways. The same people that get mad at me for not throwing my first 3 picks of the drafted offensive line are all of a sudden okay with not picking offensive line early in the draft. Anyway, all that to be said, the question is where are you? CJ Stroud and 3 first-round picks should get Joe Burrow. In what universe? You've just literally said you don't want CJ Stroud. You said you've devalued him. You said what he did in the playoffs now makes him not valuable as a quarterback. The way this works is that either CJ Stroud is of enough value to be added to that trade and get Joe Burrow in return, in which case, why are you trading CJ Stroud? If he has enough value as a young quarterback, you should stick with CJ Stroud instead of mortgaging your franchise's future for a marginal upgrade at quarterback. But if he is a significant upgrade, which he is, I think that Joe Burrow at this point is a significant upgrade over CJ Stroud, then CJ Stroud doesn't have enough value to add to that trade to be the Bengals literally go, okay, sure, in the Bengals' eyes, they get a quarterback back that they can play, and maybe the change of scenery helps CJ Stroud out. But I don't think that the math is mathing on this situation hypothetically, where we suddenly don't like CJ Stroud as our franchise quarterback and then trade him and have enough value in him along with whatever amount of first-round picks we're going to give to get Joe Burrow in return. Like,
First off, everyone needs to stop that right now. There's no universe.
Yeah, 100%.
There's no universe where Cincy would trade Joe Burrow. So regardless of what you think the compensation would be, there's no universe where that's happening.
Well, so actually, there's some unrest in that room. There's some belief that Joe Burrow might force his way out, in which case it'd be like a Deshaun Watson situation without the legal troubles.
I don't think he's going to force his way out before the start of this next season. That would be a shock to me. Like the way their season ended, he was hurt all of last season. Like what ground does he have to stand on to go, hey, I didn't play, but I'm not good here. We need to go. I've got a stud wide receiver but I don't have enough. I need to go.
Another part of it is that he, along with those stud wide receivers, heavily advocated for not firing Zach Taylor. And so the Bengals are the only team in the AFC North that kept their head coach at the behest of their star quarterback and his wide receivers. Why would they move on from that guy? I don't get it. Yeah, I agree.
I don't understand the unrest then. If they got their head coach, where's the unrest? Like
there's like a rumor, and I don't know how reliable that rumor is, but it's forced enough people. Enough people have heard it that they feel comfortable about a Joe Burrow trade.
But the whole, get rid of CJ Stroud, it wouldn't be like a quarterback for a quarterback. And if it was, I mean, then it would be a 1-for-1. The whole draft pick thing is on the premise that you're trading to a team and all they're giving you is draft picks, much like they did with Cleveland.
Oh, I think if this was a realistic scenario and the Texans were trading CJ Stroud to Joe Burrow, they would be the ones that would be providing draft capital to supplement the trade in order to make it work.
No, absolutely
yeah, 100%,
not.
100%.
Absolutely not. There's no way. This dude is much younger than that dude. And as far as what they're capable of, the things are comparable. You are going to have to pay CJ Stroud. Joe Burrow's already got the contract, but like, I think you're probably going to get off cheaper paying CJ Stroud because of what he hasn't done versus what they've already committed to Joe Burrow long term.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, I think that Joe Burrow, relative to how the QB market is going to move, is a steal. Because right now, Dak Prescott set it at $60 million. I believe Joe Burrow is around 55, which means that you're sitting here in a pretty sweet spot where that market is going to climb, and Joe Burrow's under contract for long enough that you'll see a period of time where he's being paid probably a lot less than he should be. But
that goes back to the original point. I don't think CJ and David Mulligata can ask for that.
Well, here, let's speak to the money. So right now, a lot of people, I've heard people speak, and I've recently become pretty familiar with where the quarterback market is on the middle end. And it turns out there's a huge gap between 20 million and 33 million. There's like a wasteland there where no one's getting paid. But looking at it right now, just to throw out an example number, just here, I'll fully disclose, like, this is what I would accept, like, as viewed as like a high risk discount that could also just be a really bad pay if CJ doesn't, pan out. I think that if Mulgeta came to the table and said, hey, rough playoff performance, understandable, we still want to get under a long-term contract, we'll do it at 50 million AAV, I'd sign that deal. I'd get him under contract for that amount. And here's where that puts you at the 12th highest paid quarterback. You're just above Kyler Murray, which a lot of Texans fans have also said that's another option in terms of how they want to do it. They want to get rid of CJ Stroud and go after Kyler Murray. I don't get that one. But anyways, that's where I would put the money at. I think that's like a really good, risk to take if I'm doing risk analysis for the Texans. Whereas once you start climbing up at that point, looking at the market, 1 or 2 mil is the difference between moving up 3 and 4 spots in the top end of the quarterback market. So I think 50 mil is the cap. There's some people that said 45, 35, 25. Where is your feel on what would be okay, we can do the extension this offseason, if this is the amount of money you're asking for?
So what I think is reasonable and what I think they want are probably two totally different things. I think that $50 million a year number is fine. I think saying that you're paid like the 12th best quarterback, even though you were like one of, the argument, again, I'm not agreeing with, but the argument, like, wait, we were one of the last 6 teams, that's probably going to be the back and forth. So I think if they could agree to that $50 million number, I think that's a win for Caserio. I think that's exactly the kind of deals you've seen him do. You go look at the Nico Collins deal, and now what that is compared to what all the other wide receivers, it's like nothing. And that's kind of where I think Nick Caserio wants to live. I believe that maybe you go like another 1 or 2 mil depending, but hopefully that's not the thing. We're not talking about that. I just can't see a scenario where either one of them want this contract. You're going to look at David Mulgeta and go, look, I need something to sell. I don't have anything to sell with. And then you're looking at Nick Caserio going, Well, I'm not buying whatever it is you're trying to sell me right now.
I'm hopeful, right? Like, I think that in a reasonable person's mind, Mulugeta doesn't want to negotiate this offseason. I think that he's going to advise CJ to take a risk on himself and prove that he's worth, resetting the market, because he believes CJ can be that. Whether or not that's a good risk to take, time will tell. But I think the Texans will pick up CJ's 5th-year option, which is
100%.
something they have to do this offseason. And I think that he plays out this season, this next season, and whatever happens. I think that one of the saving graces, if he was to try and negotiate this season, that could push him maybe closer to 55 mil and locking up that contract, which, by the way, anything that is under resetting the market for CJ Stroud is probably a good deal, but I don't know if I'd go higher than 50 million based off of what happened in the playoffs. CJ is, for all intents and purposes, an average quarterback. And in today's league, in terms of numbers, not in terms of, like, I believe he can be better. He's shown it. But for going into these negotiations, the Texans aren't going to go, well, your rookie season was really good, so we're going to pay you a lot of money because you're an excellent quarterback. It's like, well, for the past 2 years, CJ Stroud, for all intents and purposes, has been the dictionary definition of an average quarterback, trying to play hero ball and making himself look like worse than what he is. But so you look at those numbers and you go, okay, well, we'll pay you 50 mil over the course of time. That number, I think, even this offseason, but over the next 2 or 3 off seasons, you start at the 12th highest paid quarterback per year, and then over the next few seasons you drop down to 15th or 16th. Oh man, if we're paying Stroud 7 mil, we might as well just start Davis Mills, like, because Stroud's not going to take 7 mil. But I think that's a big piece. So I tweeted this out earlier. I'm gonna bring this up just so we can talk about it, and because I want to clarify myself. I think some people got confused by what I was saying. They thought I was saying Davis Mills should be the starting quarterback, which is far from what I was trying to say. Davis Mills, for some reason, keeps signing with the Texans at what is probably less than he could be making elsewhere if he was viewed as someone contending for a starting job. I think he likes it here. It's a really good, here's another $7 to $8 million. Please keep backing up CJ Stroud. And I think Nate Tice on Twitter put it really well. Like, there's no underlying metric or anything that points to Mills being better than CJ Stroud. Mills is just a really good backup quarterback. And with that in mind, what I'm about to say is that in short is that the defense is really good. And so with that, I think this is an appropriate risk to take if Mulugeta forces the Texans to the table to negotiate CJ Stroud's extension. And he says, we want, 55, 60 million. We want to reset the market. Whatever he says, that's just not something the Texans are going to do. You have to be prepared to, he says, if you don't do this, we're going to hold out. I'd look him dead in the face the first time he threatened it, and I would say, do it. Hold out for as long as you want. We will start Davis Mills either until we don't feel like he's doing a good enough job, or until you sign the contract that we're willing to give you, or until you end your holdout. If you end your holdout without an extension, you are still the starting quarterback of this team. But until we feel like Davis Mills can't do what's needed, which is the bare minimum to keep the offense afloat until the defense wins the game. And obviously this could change depending on how the schedule pans out, because if it's similar to this season where like the first half of the schedule is like a lot of difficult matchups, I would feel a little different about going in without CJ. But I mean, I think that at this point I can confidently say we're not division champions. The schedule's not going to be as hard as it was last season. And so we go into this season, I'm not saying that Davis Mills is better than CJ. I'm not saying that that's the appropriate course of action. We look at the possibilities, obviously, with people talking about moving on from CJ, and the reason that doesn't make sense, it's that your options are realistically Davis Mills, trade for a veteran starter, or draft a quarterback in a draft class where you don't have a high enough pick to get a valid starter. You're just like being like, well, maybe Drew Allard didn't get a good chance at Penn State, and he really is as good as people thought he was 3 years ago. Which is not, I mean, it's not a good approach. Your approach is to run it back with CJ and either confirm that he just doesn't have it, or that he is what you need him to be, and extend him. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But if Mulugeta forces him to the table and those negotiations don't go well, I would tell him straight up from the start. I'd be like, look, this is what we're willing to pay CJ Stroud. He can either take this or he doesn't, and he'll be our starting quarterback this season. But if he holds out, we're not going to budge on that number. We will revisit it if we don't feel like our current course of action makes sense. So like, you don't have to say all that last part there, right? But basically what it comes down to is you take that risk. You say, we don't negotiate with terrorists, Mr. Mulugeta. We have this number in mind. This is what we're willing to pay your client. And if you don't want to do that, hold out. That's cool. And then until it's very evident that Davis Mills being at quarterback is what's causing the Texans to lose games, you stick with it. Or until CJ ends the holdout. There's like a minor, like 0.001% chance that Davis Mills just Kurt Warners it. And then you go, okay, well, maybe we don't need CJ Stroud, but I don't think the odds of that are so incredibly low. I'm surprised I said it out loud. But yeah, I think it's a worthwhile negotiation tactic, but I don't think that Davis Mills is a better quarterback than CJ Stroud. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think there's an even lesser chance that CJ Stroud, coming off those 2 horrible playoff games, goes, you know what? The next best way to increase my value and get the money that I want is to not play football. like, I'm sorry. Like the holdout thing, when I saw you tweet it out, I was like, why would he do that? Like he just came off the 2 worst games, arguably of his career. And you're telling me now he's going to go, nope, pay me or I won't play. Like, there's no way. Even his agent be like, bro, we need you to get out there. We need you to go throw 6 TDs and 400 yards and cook somebody so that I can sell that.
It would make even less sense than when Le'Veon Bell held out, and Le'Veon Bell had every reason to hold out.
And CJ doesn't strike me as the type of dude, you know, to be standoffish like that. I think he's going to honor his contract. I think he's going to play. You know, I think he's, you know, good Christian man. He's going to look at that and go, that's not what I'm about. Like, I'll honor my contract and then whatever happens, happens. I think that's what he'll do. I don't think that you're going to have to question whether or not he plays. Brandon brought up a point. Would you pick up his 5th year to keep more control in case you trade? I don't think it'll come to that. I don't think, you know, they'll have to trade him. I truly believe what D'Amico said when he goes, look, we're behind this guy. You saw the entire team rally around this dude. So everybody that thinks that the team's just all of a sudden going to wake up one morning and go, you know what? CJ ain't it. Where are you getting it from? I mean, yeah, the fans are going to say that because he laid not 1 but 2 eggs on prime time when the Texans don't get prime time games. He might have cost the Texans 10 years of prime time games by playing so poorly in the last 2. And that's hard.
Saturday at 3:30 you go.
Exactly. He might have just put us back in purgatory as a fan base because we're back to Saturday at 3:30. I mean, I'm joking. I'm kidding. But
I wouldn't mind Saturday at 3:30. Honestly, it's a solid watch time.
Not for me. It says you're good, but not good. Anyway, for me, I think you're going to see CJ Stroud come in more motivated than he's ever been to ball out. I think everything that you wanted from CJ Stroud this year, you're going to get it next year. It's a contract year. There isn't a dude in a sport that doesn't turn it up. And I don't know if you know the meme where the guy sits forward in his chair when he's playing video games, where it's like he's rocked back. That's what they all do in contract years. They go up, time to lock in, and they ball out. CJ Stroud's going to go nuts next year, and we're going to look dumb as a fan base going, well, we didn't want that guy, you know? And I'm talking collectively. I don't feel that way. Doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter the situation. I do believe Nick Caserio is going to go in there and shore up this line. I think they're going to be in the market for a running back. I don't know if we're going to talk about the Joe Mixon stuff. Caserio said a ton yesterday. I thought it was awesome.
We can dive into that. That was next on the agenda, was going through what Caserio talked about. He dropped a few. I want to come into agreement with Jason Braddock tweeted it out, but I wanted to agree. Houston sports media, you know, has done with recent things. Like, I don't know. We never talked about when that Jaguars lady like told Liam Cohen, don't worry, it's okay, you did a good job or whatever. If there's one thing I've learned since being on Twitter, especially from those in Houston sports media, it's that you kind of want people who are like, you can be a fan, but like when you are doing your job as media, like you are not a fan of the team, you are someone who is trying to uncover information and represent the fans to those who are a part of the team and get down to it. So I appreciate that, especially in this presser. It was a very important presser after a disappointing end of the season, that everyone, Landry Locker, John M. Alexander, everyone who was in that room was asking very good questions that weren't badgering the guys. They weren't like, going out there and trying to let out every fan's frustration on the front office of the Texans, but they went out there and asked questions that needed answering and uncovered some information. Aaron Wilson had a good question out there on Joe Mixon that ended up uncovering, at least peeling back a couple more layers on that so that we as fans know what's going on. So really appreciative of that. But to get into the presser, let's start with Joe Mixon. Like, they basically unveiled a little bit more about what happened with him. A lot of people are like, did he, fall from like something, or did he jump off a bridge, or did he accidentally, discharge a firearm into his foot? Like, what happened? And they kind of delved a little more into it. But how do you feel about Joe Mixon's chances of coming back next season based off of what Caserio said?
I don't think there's a scenario. I really don't. I think he's on the wrong side of the age number for a running back. I think there's a lot of intriguing options out there. I'm talking about you, Breece Hall. And I just really think that the Texans go in a different direction. You're going to have an opportunity to either sign someone like Breece Hall younger for a longer contract, or, there'll be other options at running back besides a dude that has some sort of foot issue that we still don't know what it is. Like, that can't be good when they won't put a name on it. Like, I get it throughout the season. Maybe he'll come back, whatever. We're being cagey. We don't want to give anything, HIPAA, whatever the heck you want to talk. It's over now. Nick Caserio could have very well put out whatever the heck it was, but it's something that is so bad that we're not going to name it. I credit to Nick Caserio for saying, look, he wasn't, skydiving or whatever. He wasn't doing something. It was just a freak accident. I'm totally cool with that. I understand that those things happen. But I don't see a world where Joe Mixon comes back. Maybe I'm just short-sighted on it, and maybe he was a good character guy and a leader, and they're going to say, hey, this is one of our guys. We want him here. Maybe. But to me, there's other options out there that are really intriguing. I really love the idea of Breece Hall in this backfield.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of money to be saved by moving on from Mixon that could then be plugged into a running back that's more likely to be there. My biggest concern with Breece Hall is health, his injury history. A couple of running backs that are coming available in free agency, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, Najee Harris, among other names. I mean, Rico Dowdle's also a name that is coming available. Not sure how many of those guys will be allowed to walk out of their building and sign a contract, but there is a good amount of options in free agency. I think the Texans have a history of not really hitting on free agent running back signings, at least not over multiple years, I guess. Because I think that Joe Mixon had a really good first season with the team. I think that Lamar Miller early in his contract was good, but most of the Texans' success has come in drafting running backs. Really, really, actually, not that much of it, because Arian Foster was undrafted. I think a lot of people forget that. So maybe it is free agents. Maybe it's undrafted free agents. Let's see who's not going to be drafted in this year's draft. We should be looking out for them. Or maybe British Brooks will step up and be the next guy. But I'm with you. I think that it's all love. I don't think that they don't like Joe Mixon, but I think that it's reached a point where the logical move would be to move on. And if we're following the Christian Harris injury recovery timeline that has given us some insight into what to expect from Joe Mixon, I think the fact that he didn't even play late this past season is not a good sign for where he's at going into this season. And I if I'm the Texans, I'm not trying to go through figuring out, is Mixon going to be back this year? Can we expect him to be what he was or whatever? He's, at this point, I'd be heavy on the running back free agent market, and I would not be surprised to see a major running back signing. Like last year, the big running back signing was Nick Chubb, who's not expected to return to the team. And that was very knee jerk. I think probably it was later in the offseason when they figured out that Joe Mixon wasn't returning. They made that move and we're like, okay, now we fixed it. But I'd expect it to go a little better this offseason. Now, another thing that was addressed in Nick Caserio's presser was that Tank Dell is recovering nicely. He's expected to be ready for offseason activities. How much weight do you place on Tank Dell's return? If you look at the receiver room, the guys that are returning this season, it's Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson, and then Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Everyone else on that roster was on a 1-year deal and is not currently under contract to return. To my knowledge, I might be missing a name or two. But how do you feel about the importance of Tank Dell returning?
I mean, I think it's important from the standpoint that you need depth. I think he's basically a better, younger Christian Kirk. So you're replacing Kirk with a better, younger version of Kirk. That's great.
Twig Dell. Oh my gosh.
You know, like.
Sorry, that's in the chat.
No, I saw it. Yeah, Brandon's on one tonight. But to me, they need him to be back because Christian Kirk's going out the door. I think Jalen Noel gets another year, another opportunity. You're talking about Higgins, who gets another opportunity. Hutch, another opportunity. I'd be really interested to see what they do with like Berrios and Watson and guys of that ilk. If they, go and look for another veteran presence, something, else that's out there. I don't know what the names are, but they're definitely going to.
Pierce is one of the names, but other than that, I hadn't done a lot of research into who's available. I wouldn't expect the Texans to go wide receiver in the draft, though.
No, they've got all the young talent. It's going to be a veteran guy. Alec Pierce, I think, probably would be really good, but I don't know if Indy lets him get away because he was so good for them. He went over 1,000 yards and like 47 receptions or something like that. So,
he's a crazy
big time
deep threat. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think they're expecting Tank Dell to come back and be that. I would hope. I mean, and who's to know what to expect? He's a lot younger than Cecil Shorts was and a lot of other guys who experienced this injury, but he is coming back from a very severe injury. I mean, I would put most of the value of Tank Dell's return on his relationship with CJ Stroud. I think that Tank Dell being on the field, it holds more value in terms of stabilizing CJ and giving him like a best bud on the field. I think it's always been Tank Dell's value, and I think I'd love to see the correlation between Tank Dell going down injured and CJ Stroud's performance afterwards, because I'm interested to see how I need to look back myself and see how that correlates. But maybe it's just me being hopeful. Like I literally put like ideal, things to happen for the Texans this offseason. Tank Dell fixes CJ Stroud. Like that was the number 3 on my list. So that doesn't mean that I think it is what will happen, but I don't know. I think that CJ Stroud is very emotionally driven. In a similar way to like Framber Valdez, maybe not like exactly, but like just kind of a guy who like takes everything very heavy, when things move and happen. And I mean, you notice it kind of in the way his demeanor shifts based off what's happening around him, how it affects how he plays. And so he's at his best when I feel like he's always been at his best when Tank Dell's on the field, but maybe that's
I have a hard time with he's been bad since Kansas City last year. That's a long time. That's a lot of football that we're saying. CJ,
I guess not bad, just not like extraordinary, I guess is the big part of it. I think that CJ, his emotional spectrum goes from like, I am the greatest person to ever throw a football to like, I'll be okay. I'll just be average.
I
don't think it goes down to bad.
If you want to do a comparison, I see a lot of what bothers CJ, what changed in CJ, in what happened to what's his name? Now I'm struggling with names. The quarterback during that broke his leg for the Texans.
Matt Schaub.
Matt Schaub, when he was Pro Bowl MVP and lit it up that 1 year, you saw a very confident person in the pocket. Did not feel like, he felt like his foundation was sturdy. Threw the ball with purpose, convicted, like had all I'm going here and I'm going to drive the ball into this dude's chest. Soon as the offensive line began to deteriorate around him and he started taking sacks, you saw him throw balls like with, okay, please don't mess this up. Just get it there, floating footballs, running, kind of falling away when he throws the ball. And you look at CJ this year, a lot of what was wrong was like there was just no accuracy because it was a lot of just get it there. Just get it there. Don't screw this up. How many deep balls did he throw that were underthrown because it was just floating up there? And you saw Nico, Higgins, whoever the deep man was, have to come back and get a football because he was afraid to screw it up. And I think whether that's not being able to plant or just worrying too much about what's around him, that's where he's got to get better. That comfort, that it doesn't matter who the receiver is. When you see him start hitting dudes with a drive, with purpose, I don't think he lacks the arm strength. I think it's more of like, don't mess this up, don't mess this up, don't mess this up. And that's a confidence thing that you can only get from yourself. You know what I mean? Like you have to will that.
Yeah, I think in segueing kind of into the next topic, the final part of the Nick Caserio presser, looking at staffing, I think that a big thing that people have not really talked about a lot. People have talked about how changing offensive coordinators and scheme can affect a quarterback and consistency in that way. But not a lot of people have talked about is like, Case Keenum was their first 2 years and then leaves for Chicago this past year. Case Keenum was a huge influence on CJ. There's other influences around the organization that have since left, but I think that looking at Caserio's comments on Nick Caley, so obviously he said Nick Caley is safe, and D'Amico, basically in a very political but kind of hinting at something answer, said that they're assessing their staff for this season. What are your feelings on Gerard Johnson? Because I think the Texans are looking at this as we have to make a change. Last offseason, it was obviously offensive coordinator, but also the offensive line coach had to go because of the way the offensive line played. This offseason ends on a bad game from CJ Stroud, a bad stretch of games in the playoffs. Do you think Gerard Johnson will be back as the QB coach if he doesn't pick up an OC job?
I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? We're talking about Gerard Johnson, and people talked about Gerard Johnson like, okay, maybe he's not the guy to lead CJ, and teams want him for their offensive coordinator. So, Miami's going to interview Gerard Johnson for their offensive coordinator. So I don't know what that says. Does that say that he's good and that it's not him, or does it say that, okay, he has no bearing on the quarterback and he's just part of a system, much like Nick Caley was as a tight ends coach, that is learning a system from a guy, and okay, we want that system. I just don't know what to make of it. Jason Braddock knows Gerard Johnson personally. He speaks very highly of Gerard Johnson. Says guy is a great football mind. So I can't see somebody like Jason saying that and him not being able to convey a message to CJ or whatever. I think this is like I went back to, I don't know that it's about the coaching as much as it is about between his ears. And the only person that can get right between his ears is CJ. I don't know what that means. I don't know how he has to do it. Whether it's a comfort level, maybe, year 2 in the system, stuff's faster, the game kind of slows down. I imagine there's a couple things that when Caley's running off, plays and designs and stuff like that, he's still trying to pick it up because it's rookie offensive coordinator, first year in the system. It's a different system from Bobby Slowick. So these are things that we're not privy to. We don't know exactly the ins and outs of that. All I can see is you have Nick Caserio going, I know CJ didn't have a great game, but I thoroughly believe in CJ Stroud. You have CJ Stroud saying, I love Kales. I love what he's doing. And we're going to figure it out. So I really think all these guys are banding together So when we're out on the outside trying to like pry one apart one way or the other, whether it's the quarterback or the quarterback coach or the offensive coordinator, because when Mike McDaniel was out there, the Twitterverse wanted him in Houston yesterday. And when he chose to go to San Diego, or I'm sorry, San Diego, LA, a lot of people, died a little bit. So I think that's a great partnership. Like that's a quarterback that in that system, he might be able to really do some things. Say what you want about Justin Herbert, but I believe he's an offensive coordinator away from being really good.
Yeah, and I if there was one candidate that I was looking at, like I said it up front, I thought that Nick Caley would stay, but Mike McDaniel was the one option that I was like, okay, maybe. I mean, if they want to move on, that's not a bad way to replace him. But I think that to speak to Gerard Johnson's situation and the coaching staff in general, I think the Texans in typical fashion are trying to do right by their people. I think that they may have internally already decided that it's probably good to put a fresh face in the quarterback position. I think that in general, they kept a lot of people. They kept pretty much most of the staff outside of OC on and O-line coach on from the previous season. So after going through this, they're probably troubleshooting, okay, where can we make a change to kind of re-energize that position? So it's not about Gerard Johnson being like someone they don't like or someone that they don't think could do it. It's that they're like, okay, well, CJ had a down year. One consistent piece that's always been there has been Gerard Johnson through the downturn of CJ Stroud. Is it possible that maybe we bring in a fresh face and kind of rejuvenate that position in some way? And I think they're trying to do right by Gerard Johnson by instead of going, okay, well, we know we're going to move on from our quarterbacks coach, let's just drop him. That's not a good look for Gerard going into this market of like potential OC interviews. So if the Dolphins are interviewing him, I think it's a good courtesy on the Texans' part to hold on and hold off on firing Gerard until it's clear whether or not he's going to get that job. Because if Gerard Johnson gets that job, one, you don't have to fire him. He has picked up a new job. He's moving on. Now you're just replacing him because he's gone. Whereas if you fire him and then he gets hired on somewhere else, which I think adversely affects his chances if he gets fired in some way. Granted, Bobby Slowick got fired and then also went over to the Dolphins and picked up a role on that staff. But I think it could be that. And when I look at names, I mentioned Case Keenum earlier. I think if the Texans could maybe lure him into retirement and potentially bring him onto the sideline, that's, I think, been a recurring theme for the past couple seasons where a lot of Texans fans are really into the idea of Case Keenum as the Texans QB coach. But I think that maybe there's room for change there. One other name I've seen on the Texans staff that potentially could at least get his role changed is Ben McDaniels, the wide receiver coach. He's also the passing game coordinator. And I think there's a lot of people that think maybe the Texans should be looking into changing up the passing game coordinator role and giving it to someone who maybe could give a little more juice to that. That being said, Cole Popovich, I believe, is the run game coordinator in the shuffle. And so a lot of people are praising what he's done with the O-line, but if the run game is a huge concern, do you bring in another coach to be the run game coordinator? Do you think that, it's a personnel thing and you need to make improvements throughout this offseason? And we'll have plenty of time to talk about that throughout the offseason in terms of what the Texans should do. We'll maybe throw around a few mock drafts and see what's up. But I just think that maybe there's a more calculation or more, trying to do right by your staff before you make those moves. That's why it's like, we'll give it a week or two, assess what changes we're going to make. But yeah, I mean, looking at that, I think that's pretty much all. Did you have anything else from the Casiri press conference that you thought was of note?
No, not really. I thought it was very interesting that they asked him, should he have done more to give the offense more to work with, because that was something that I felt like you had spoke to a few times throughout the season. And he was very adamant, like, hey, we had enough to beat anybody. Just didn't execute, turnover.
I think a lot of people are taking that the wrong way, though. Like, I think when you contextualize the process of last offseason and you look at the fact that, yeah, I think that if Joe Mixon's healthy and if a lot of things shake out differently, yeah, you did enough in hindsight, which, I mean, still, even without Joe Mixon, yeah, sure, you had enough talent to potentially win that game. I don't think he's saying that there's no room for improvement on this roster. I think he's just saying, like, obviously we entered that game with a chance to win it. Like, and it's of all the divisional games that the Texans have played, divisional round games, this is probably the most realistic chance they've ever had at advancing. I don't think there's been a single other Texans team in their history, outside of maybe like 2012 potentially, that had a real shot at winning. And that was a kickoff return away from winning in 2012. But even then, back in 2012, I remember going to that game being like, well, it's the Ravens. It's like a really tough matchup. And I wasn't like, oh, the Texans are going to go in and like crush them. I was like, man, I really hope they show up. Whereas this year I was like, you know, this Texans defense can shut it down, and I think they really can win this game. It wasn't like, oh, I hope we have a chance, or I hope we play our best ball. It was like, yeah, we can go in there and get it. So, but yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I feel pretty good about it. Oh, I guess there's one more thing. He referenced Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover not having season-ending injuries or like severe injuries. But how do you feel about Cade Stover here? That's one of the last things I want to talk about. Like the tight end room in general. Are you higher on drafting a tight end higher now? Do you like the way the room shapes up with Dalton Schultz and Brevin Jordan and Cade Stover? How do you feel about that room in general?
I don't understand where everyone is in love with the tight end position, that they're like, we just need more tight ends. Like, I don't know if maybe everybody wants to run more 12. Like I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Cade Stover, when he wasn't hurt, I think he was very serviceable, young guy. The Stover stuff is, I think, here to stay. I think that's a great part of the offense as opposed to the tush push. I think Brevin Jordan, when he's healthy, obviously it's been 2 years, but when he's healthy, he's a really good blocking and receiving tight end. And then Dalton Schultz just came off one of the best years from a tight end in Texans history. Like I don't understand where everybody sees those three and go, oh no, we need to revamp this room. We could trade Dalton, or we could do this and go draft the tight. Like, for what? That's not an area that's anywhere, though. We were talking about running backs. Every running back you named that was out there in a free agent they could bring in has injury history. That's the name of the game. NFL stands for not for long. I don't wish injuries on guys, but I can't draft anyone or sign anyone and go, that dude injury proof. It's not possible.
I mean, yeah, I feel you on that. For me, what it is looking at the guys that are behind Dalton Schultz. Like, Dalton Schultz had a rebound year. Once again, we're revisiting the list of players I owe an apology to. Sorry, Dalton. Did really good. Really love and appreciate you being on the team. Tight end 2, I think, is clearly Brevin Jordan, but he has his fair share of health concerns. I think he's great and can contribute to this team in a meaningful way. But to me, it's like, I don't necessarily, a lot of people are like, well, if Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon falls to the Texans in 28, you take him. I think maybe a slightly more developmental prospect. I wouldn't mind having him. I mean, give him that year of like with Dalton Schultz on the roster, kind of transitioning it. And I mean, they could want to just re-sign Dalton Schultz and keep him the rest of his career. I mean, that could be where it goes. But if you're having an inkling of thought, like, Dalton Schultz is about to get really expensive, we want to make sure we can go younger. You're looking, I think, every position outside of quarterback and like defensive end, realistically, you're looking at like, can we get younger and have a player that's under contract for cheaper longer? Because we're about to have to spend a lot of money at these other positions. Like, because I have confidence, as much as we've talked about CJ in a negative light, that CJ gets right. And when CJ gets right, he commands a lot of the salary cap. So then you have to start drafting with the thought process in mind of like, this player could contribute a little. Like, that was kind of the thought process behind Cade Stover, was like, could contribute a little bit this year. And if we really don't like Dalton, then we can just bring Cade Stover up and it'll be Brevin Jordan and Cade Stover. That obviously didn't play out. But then this year you look and you go, okay, well, Endries out of Texas. There's the tight end out of Houston. He's like a 6'7", like excellent red zone target. I mean, I watched him at UH this past year, and I was like, man, number 9 on the Cougars needs to be a Texan next year. The dude is great hands and is developing as a blocker. I think the biggest thing that's missing in the area I'd like to draft a tight end is that a lot of the scouting reports are like, is still developing as a blocker, which most tight ends are, but like you'd want like a more stout, like I think last year it was Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech was like a late round pick. The Bills ended up getting him, but man, I really would have wanted the Texans to go after him. But for me, it's like I don't think that the Texans need to spend like a first, second, or even third round pick. But I think that continuing the Koziel, thank you, Brandon, and Kasiri's been keeping an eye on him. So you see, we're right there. Could be a great pickup in a room where you carry four. You've had a lot of injury problems at tight end. You bring in a guy who, I mean, I think Koziel is slotting as a 5th round pick, and it seems weird to use a 5th round pick on a guy you could release and then try and sign to the practice squad. But just going after a tight end that you think can round out that room and provide something and potentially develop into a more primary like tight end 2 or low end tight end 1 option on the roster, depending on how Dalton Schultz's future shapes out moving forward. So I don't think it's the most important need. If I'm ranking the Texans' needs right now, it's like offensive line, running back, in defensive interior based off of the free agents that are there right now, and then tight end, I think. And tight end is just listed as a need because it's the first one where you go, that's not really a need. That's just like the next one where if you can, you should address in a way. So, and I'm questionable on if I would running back and defensive interior to me are almost on the same level. A lot of people are mad. I put the first mock draft I posted, I went defensive interior in the first round, and people were like, why are we spending a first round pick on defense? And it's like, did you see how many games we won just solely based on defense? I'm doing everything in my power to maintain that. I think they should re-sign Sheldon Rankins and Tim Settle and potentially Foley Fedekasi, but I don't know. Fedekasi has had his fair share of injury struggles, so I think that at the end of the day, if they only get Sheldon Rankins back and they draft a really solid interior defensive lineman, it's a win. So, but anyways, that's why I think the tight end position is somewhat of a need. And
for me,
something they address.
For me, if you want to list them, I'll take everything you listed. Instead of tight end at the end, I would go safety. I would go linebacker.
Yeah,
I would
actually, you know what? Put those two in front of tight end.
That's what I'm saying. Like, give me both of those. Like
with Christian Harris, I don't think they should bring back Christian Harris, and in that case, you need to go after a linebacker.
And for me, it's like, and where do we just named what was that 6, 7 positions?
Where do you pick tight end in that draft? I mean, there's plenty of draft picks, but after all the trades happen, it's going to be so much fewer.
Go find you an undrafted dude and from Penn State where all they do is block and catch 7-yard ins.
Penn State linebacker, you know.
I'm talking about tight end. I'm talking about end? Yeah. If you really want to dabble with a tight end that may live on your practice squad, go get an undrafted dude. Like there's got to be more positions you can.
I mean, so 6 picks in the first 4 rounds, as Brandon brought up, and I've done a couple mock drafts so far. So yeah, it's a lot of picks, and like all of those needs, like especially if you you can cut running back out of the draft if you go free agent, because realistically you just need like you either need to draft high at running back or you need to go for a free agent that can be the guy, like Breece Hall. And so with that, once you open that up, we named like 6 or 7 positions. And if you remove one of them, you have enough picks to spread the wealth if you find value at each one of those spots. But as we all know, I mean, the Texans are going to trade some of those picks. They're going to move around. I would be surprised to see them move up slightly in the first round to maybe get that Penn State guard or the Miami tackle who is probably switching to guard in the NFL.
I would love that.
But we'll have more time to talk off-season stuff in the off-season. It's been an hour. So it's time to bring the 2025 season to a close officially, because it doesn't really end until the bullpen recaps the game and talks about the off-season. So we have done that. So thank you for tuning in. I have been James Roy, and you can find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get social media. Tom is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the Bullpen, the #1 veteran-run podcast in the entire known universe. until we find one somewhere else. Maybe there's some veterans that are Texans fans on another planet that really like talking about it on a podcast, but we'll never know. All right. That's it. That's been, man, I feel like I got to drag this one out. It's the end of the 2025 season. I guess before we really sign off, any final thoughts on 2025 and going in? Or
I think if you would have told people before the season started, the Texans were going to win 13 games, probably would have been pretty happy. I know it's not the way that people wanted it to go. I know it's not the hump that they were supposed to get over, but and definitely after 0-3, there were so many people that left this team for dead. 2-5, people were talking mock drafts then. So to run 10 straight, to be where they were, to have the opportunity, I mean, that has to count for something. I know everybody's not happy right now. I know people are upset. This is not the way you wanted to see your team end it, with what a lot of people feel is a generational defense. And I agree. I am definitely one of those people that feels like there was a point in this season where the switch flipped from, oh, they shouldn't be here, to, oh, they're here now. I think, they should just go ahead and win the whole damn thing. And it just didn't happen. And that's okay. I love how young this team is. Anybody that's questioning D'Amico, I don't know why you would do that. I think he coached his tail off this year.
Texans Jacob. I hate calling people out like that, but and he's been wishy-washy on Stroud and D'Amico. Once again, hate saying it like that, but yeah, you said it like that. That was the first thing that came to mind.
I mean, it's one of those what have you done for me lately type people, and I hate it because you basically pick and choose your spots to be that guy, and you're not consistent. I think just keep consistent. If you're going to stay on that side of the street, stay on that side of the street. But for me personally, I feel like this is year 3. We've got 3 straight playoff appearances for CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans. And I don't see any reason why they won't do it again next year if they're healthy. I think preseason, this team is going to be one of the favorites to, win the AFC. I think people are going to see this defense. People are going to see, what they've done in the draft and the free agency and go, they're locked and loaded, ready to go. This is definitely the best window, I feel like, of Texan football that I can think of from the standpoint of it's not done. I imagine, guys get contracts and things, Nick keeps doing his job. This is a ride, if everybody stays healthy, that could be at least another 3-4 more years. You look at teams like Buffalo and Baltimore that had sustained runs, and, they had the quarterbacks and coach combinations there. And I think we're like right in the prime spot for the Texans to do something really special.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And real quick, Primo looks on the Instagram chat. You didn't send a collab invite. You just tagged me in it. So I'd love to watch it after the show and then do that. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like the defense was at where it's at. A lot of the defense is coming back. It's not ideal. And I think that a lot of people have said this, but like the Dan Campbell quote of like, you never know when it's your last chance. Like you have to get it when you're there because it could be your last chance. And that Lions team has, ever since going to the NFC Championship, just not quite looked the same as flawless as they did going into that. So, I mean, obviously you have to take your opportunity, you can get it. But imagine if the defense can stay comparable to the same level that it was this past year and CJ Stroud and the offense click. I think that it would be comparable to Indiana in college this past season, just never a doubt, like just, we're watching a team go all the way and never doubting that it could happen. As opposed to how this season started. I mean, I like how you called it out. The 0-3 start. If you told people after that 0-3 start that the Texans would make it to the divisional round, it would be impressive. But to that same token, the goal was to get past the divisional round. So you just became impressive, ran a 10-game win streak just to lose in the divisional round. It is bittersweet because it is impressive what happened, and it should be viewed as a historical thing, but it's kind of become a thing that I know 20 years from now only Texans fans are going to be talking about. Like it's a defense that should be lauded as such and can still be. Like, I think if the Texans go and do what they should over the next year or two, that defense can still get the notoriety that it should have, but it should be the 2025 Texans defense, not the 2026 defense. Not that it couldn't also be 2026, but the 2025 Texans defense should have a place in NFL history, and unfortunately, due to the way things panned out, I will be probably, me and you and other Texans fans will be the only ones talking about it 20 years from now, which is unfortunate. But yeah, with that, I guess I already did the sign off, so we can sign off. We'll see you. Tom and I will talk about it, but I don't know, late February, early March, just whenever things start to pick up, we'll hop on, do the lives. But yeah, until then, thanks for tuning in this season. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Tex.